Good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us today. If you were the one person who was paying attention to what time this was supposed to be, I'm sorry we're late. It got a little flat tire on the way back to College Station from visiting a patient. And so feeling very calm and collected now after all of that. But thank you for being here. And my name is Heidi Dixon, and I'm a chaplain with Elite Health. And our mission is to light the way and make the most of what is. And this is Sunshine for Your Soul. So today I would like to share with you some of the things that come up in conversation at the end of life, and not necessarily just at the end of life, anytime, and that is a feeling of unworthiness, just an overwhelming sense of failure or lack of self-worth, and sort of this conviction that there's no way that the ship can be righted again. And so these conversations happen, and once someone's decided that they're doomed to hell or they've done too much bad stuff, it's really hard to convince someone otherwise. And so I've come across a couple of things over time that kind of speak to this, but in ways that are helpful for me to think about it and to understand it. And the first one I read in a book about an invitation to breakfast, and it ends up being with the Lord, another one of those dollar buys at the thrift shop. But the conversation goes on, and it's the Lord himself describing this in the book, but it talks about how on the spectrum of sinfulness or holiness, however you want to look at it, it's really the same spectrum. And in this scenario, the exercise was to take a business card. I meant to bring one as a prop, but I'm without. But you can visualize maybe something like this tall. And at the bottom of it, writing like the worst sinner in all of humanity that you can think of. And Hitler comes to mind for me, especially after reading Man's Search for Meaning last week that I shared with you. But Hitler is an obvious pick. His choices affected a lot of people and meant death for many. And so we say, okay, so we'll say Hitler is the greatest sinner that we can think of, and we'll put him at the bottom of the business card. And opposite that, the holiest person you can think of in all of humanity at the top. And yours may be different than mine. Mother Teresa is an easy pick. I think many people know her. And so she lived her life in service and in her love for God. And so we'll put her at the top. And so we have our business card with Hitler at the bottom and Mother Teresa at the top. And then in the story it goes on to say, okay, so we have the full spectrum, let's say, of sinfulness or holiness and that continuum. And then they said, now as we come before God, that spectrum is like placing the business card at the base of the Empire State Building and imagining God at the top and all the distance in between, which of course is great. I don't know how tall the Empire State Building is exactly, but it's a long way. And that's the gap that we can't fill on our own. Mother Teresa is still just at the top of the business card, as it were. And so for me, that's a great visual of the gap and where we like to put ourselves. And I think very often feel like we feel the lack between the bottom of the business card and the top, depending on where we put ourselves in that spectrum. And then we feel the gap between the top of the business card and the top of the Empire State Building. And we just feel like, well, I can't do all of that. I can't do most of that or any of that. And so I must not have any value at all, or my worth can't amount to much because we just are so aware of what we are unable to do. And so that is an image that's helpful for me in understanding what we're capable of and the freedom that comes with not being able to do much, at least if you're a Christian, and from a Christian standpoint, you cannot save yourself, right? That's Jesus' job. And if you're not a Christian, then you have your own thoughts about this, and this may be a moot point because maybe it's not about salvation for you. Maybe it's about living a good life and being kind to others. You have your own set of things that are important and that make life worth living. So I came across this story that, depending on the gap, that's and your own feelings of self-worth or worthlessness. I think it's a hard thing to say out loud, I feel worthless, but sometimes we can gain the courage, or we trust another person enough to reveal that. But I think maybe it's something a lot of us combat in our daily lives. You know, it creeps in there and maybe we don't even know we're feeling it. But I like this story because it's a great illustration of how this might play out. And this was written by a gentleman. He was a Canadian preacher and theologian, A.B. Simpson, Albert Benjamin Simpson, from Canada. And this is his story, and he writes, I have read somewhere of a little street boy who was taken up out of a cellar by a social worker and sent to a farmer's house in Westchester. He had a great big room all to himself, and when he was shown into it at night and a little candle placed on the table, it was a perfect world of bewilderment to him, and he thought he was in heaven. Finally, he got tired and sleepy, and he looked at the snowy white bed. He had never been in a bed in his life. So he slowly crept up to it, and after a while, he just laid his little cheek against the soft pillow. He could not believe it was for him. There was some mistake. He began to feel guilty after a while. The idea that he should lie down on a snowy white bed like that, it was presumption or intrusion. But he went just far enough to let his head poke into heaven for a moment. And then he got down on the floor under the bed and said, "This is the place for me," and curled himself up and was soon fast asleep. Early in the morning, the landlady came in and saw him, and she cried, "Oh, dear me, what does the boy mean?" And she picked him up and put him in the bed and tried to explain that the bed was for him. But she had the hardest time to make him understand and to induce him to get under the nice clean sheets. How many of God's dear children are there who are sleeping under the bed instead of resting in his lap? We are so slow to believe all that he has for us and to take what we are entitled to. Oh, someday, when whiter than the snow and higher than the angels, and when all the magnificence of the ages is at our feet, how ashamed we will be to think how hard it was for us to take a little crumb from our Father's table. God is looking for princely hearts, like Abraham, who are willing to believe that he is the God who he says he is. We cannot quite understand it, but it is so. Get it into your heart if you do not quite get it into your intellect, and be strong in faith, giving glory to God. So, I just love that image because I can relate to it, I understand it, I see it in other people, and I described it to a person. I actually had a dream about one of my patients, and I let them know. I said, I had this dream, and I was trying to tell you how much God loved you, and you crawled under the bed. And they said, yeah, that sounds like me. So there's an image for you. And so today, the song I'd like to sing for you is called Lord, I Need You by Matt Mayer. Let's see. And really, it's about just accepting our limitations and the invitation that we've been given, which is to rest. Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way, and when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. You're my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. You're my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Okay. Well, I'm not sure how much time we've spent yet together, but I do want to close with this. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest." And this is one of my favorite devotionals. It's an old book called God Calling, before Jesus Calling ever came out. And it, according to the preface, it says that God revealed himself to two listeners, these anonymous women, and what he said to them, and this is what he says. It says, "Regret nothing, not even the sins and failures. When a man views earth's wonders from some mountain height, he does not spend his time in dwelling on the stones and stumbles, the feints and failures that marked his upward path. So with you. Man is so made that he can carry the weight of 24 hours and no more. Directly he weighs down with the years behind and the days ahead, and his back breaks. A man on a march on earth carries only what he needs for that march. Would you pity him if you saw him bearing, too, the overwhelming weight of the worn-out shoes and uniforms of past marches and years? And yet, in the mental and spiritual life, man does these things. Small wonder my poor world is heartsick and weary." So, I hope that you can think about the little boy under the bed and accept an invitation to come and rest. And yes, the bed is for you, and the clean white sheets are for you, and that we can lay our old uniforms of years past beside the bed and climb in and